Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to the LangChain by Project series. I'm Mukul from NIIT, and in this series, we don't just talk about AI concepts, we actually build real AI apps step by step so you can understand how things work in practice. In episode 1, we built our first LangChain app, an AI dev helper running fully locally on Llama 3 using Ollama. And today, we're going a bit deeper into one skill that honestly decides everything. Whether an AI model gives you some random generic reply or whether it gives you something that's actually useful. And that skill is prompt engineering. So in this episode, we're going to build something called a prompt engineering playground. The idea is very simple but very powerful. You enter one task, then you write 6 different prompt styles, all for that same task. And you see side by side how each prompt style completely changes the output, even though the model stays exactly the same. We'll build this using Streamlit, LangChain, LCEL, and Ollama. Alright, before we jump into the code, let me quickly explain the idea on the whiteboard, like how we're actually planning this project. So imagine this. We are going to build an app where the user gives us one single task, just one question. Like for example, explain Bitcoin to a 12-year-old. Now instead of sending that question once to the model, here's the twist. We're going to take that same task and run it through 6 different prompt styles. Think of it as 6 different ways of asking the same question. First is the naive prompt, which has no rules, no structure, just the raw question. Second is instruction based, where we add clear directions like keep it short or make it simple. Third is role based, where we tell the model who it is, like a teacher or an expert. Fourth is few shot, where we show the model a small example before asking the real question. Fifth is structured, where we break things into sections like role, task, and output. And sixth is template style, which feels closer to something you'd reuse in a real project. So the model stays the same, the task stays the same. The only thing that changes is how we phrase the prompt. Now the plan is simple. The user writes one task, then for each of these 6 styles, they write or tweak a prompt. When they click a button, we send all 6 prompts through the same LangChain chain. And the output will show 6 different answers side by side. Alright, now let's actually look at the code and build this thing step by step. We start with the imports at the top. First, we will import Streamlit. That will give us the web interface of the application. Then we import Chat Ollama from LangChain community models. This is the bridge between LangChain and our local Llama model running through Ollama. And finally, we bring in prompt template, which lets us define structured prompts in a clean, reusable way. After that, we set the model name as Llama 3.1. This is just a simple variable, but it's important. If you change models later, you only change it here. Quick reminder also, Ollama must be running and you must have already pulled the model using Ollama pull Llama 3.1. Otherwise, the app won't be able to talk to the LLM. Next, we create the LLM itself. We use Chat Ollama and pass in the model name and set the temperature to 0.4. That temperature keeps the model helpful and consistent. Not too robotic, but not overly creative. Now comes the LangChain part, and we create a very simple prompt template. Literally, just prompt text. No extra instructions. Whatever text the user writes becomes the prompt. Then we connect that template directly into the LLM using LCEL, LangChain Expression Language. This pipe operator is doing a lot of work here. It basically means take the prompt, pass it to the model, and get a response, all in one clean line. To make everything reusable, we wrap this inside a helper function called call LLM. This function sends the prompt to the chain using chain.invoke and waits for the response, and then safely extracts just the text output. The get attribute part is just a small safety check, so whether LangChain returns an object or a string, we always get clean text back. From here on, anytime we want the model to respond, we just call this function. Now we move into the core idea of the app, prompt styles. We define 6 different stages of prompting: naive, instruction, role, few shot, structured, and template. Each one represents a more thoughtful way of talking to the model. And instead of just explaining them theoretically, we actually let the user write and test all 6. For every style, we store an ID, a display name, and a short description. This keeps the UI readable and lets us loop over everything cleanly instead of repeating code. Next is the example for function. This is what generates a tiny starter example for each prompt style. If the user doesn't know how to write a prompt for a certain stage, they can click one button and get a working example instantly. Each style is handled slightly differently. Naive is just the raw task. Instruction adds simple constraints. Role assigns a personality to the model. In my case, it's friendly teacher. Then few shot shows one example and asks the model to copy the style. Then structured breaks the task into clear sections. And template thinks like something you'd actually reuse in code. Now let's move to the Streamlit UI. First, we set the page config first, a clear title and a wide layout. On the left sidebar, we explain how to use the app step by step. There's also a reset button, so you can wipe all prompts and start fresh at any time. And at the bottom, we show which local model you're using, straight from the variable above. In the main area, we explain the core idea in one sentence. One task, 6 different prompts, and 6 different outputs, all powered by LangChain and a local LLM. Then we ask the user for a single task, like explain Bitcoin to a 12-year-old. The task stays the same, only the prompt style changes. We store each prompt in Streamlit session state so nothing disappears when buttons are clicked. That's why this app feels smooth instead of annoying. Next, we render all 6 prompt styles in a grid, 2 rows and 3 columns, where we include the data like ID, name, and description. Each one shows the style name, a short description, an expandable example, and a text box for the user's own prompt. There's also a fill example button, which instantly drops a starter prompt into the text area, and one text box where user can write prompt by self. And after that, we create a button called Generate Outputs for my prompts. As soon as it's clicked, we show a spinner that says, calling the LangChain chain for each prompt. This just lets the user know that the app is actively talking to the LLM in the background. Inside this block, we create an empty dictionary called outputs. This dictionary is where we'll store the model's response for each prompt style. Next, we loop over all the prompt styles. It can be naive, instruction, role, and so on. Now comes the important check. If the user actually wrote a prompt for this stage, we send it to the LLM using the call LLM function. That function runs the prompt through the LangChain LCEL chain,